Welcome to a tape-based edition of ARG Presents. I'm your good pal, your good buddy, Amigo Aaron, joined by a man whom I wish I could fast-forward through. I give you the Brent.
Answer me, maggot!
Oh, God. A portent of things to come. Merry Christmas, the Brent. How was your Christmas yesterday?
It was fine. It was very good.
It was very good. I can tell you it was wrought with joy and delight. Well, I had a good time.
I'm not a big fan of Christmas in general. I'm a Thanksgiving guy. Less pressure, less things to worry about. Food, football, on to the next day.
It is sort of a pressure cooker. It can be a pressure cooker. You know, I understand.
And the thing is the relief isn't even like some things you build up and you have a lot of stress before it, and then when the day actually comes, it's releasing. That's not Christmas. You're stressed about Christmas for like 4 or 5 days while you still hand out gifts that you couldn't get to the people on Christmas Day.
Yeah. You're right, man. It is like it's really like a week long. You've got to get past all of December, and then you're into clear. Occasionally, you'll have the rare straggler that rolls in, or if you're me, doing Secret Santa 1,000 million miles away, you have to wait around and hopefully your package will show up again. Listen, that's the way that goes. Nevertheless, one thing Christmas doesn't do is give you a lot of spare time. That's for sure. But one thing it does do is give you time with your family and friends. And this is the perfect week to do something like this with your family and friends, because last week we spun the wheel, we made the deal, and this week, Brent, we're going to be doing something a little bit outside of our normal, which is BAM! VCR games. The old VCR games, the Brent. Now, VCR games, of course, came along with the invention of the VCR. And you can see
doing it beforehand would have been incredibly difficult.
Yeah. And so it was a lot tougher because you had to hold the tapes up to the light, and that made it was a lot slower, you know. It's funny to think about VCR games now, because eventually they kind of morphed it, I guess, into DVD games, sorta, kinda. But these things were around a lot longer than I anticipated. The Brit. Do you remember the first time you ever played one of these bad boys?
No, to be honest.
Yeah.
I would assume it's actually the game we played this week.
That's the first one you've ever played?
I think so. But it was also one of the first ones ever made, so there you go.
Well, no, God, no. Incorrect, sir. So
okay. Well, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, you're close, but you're way off. So the VCR games, VCRs didn't come around till around, they were around in like 77, 78, but most people didn't own one. Our family didn't own one until the 80s. They were expensive, man. And in the old days, they were hugely expensive, and families would go out and you would rent the VCR. Do you remember when we used to do that, the Brent?
I don't remember us doing it, but I remember it being an option.
You could go to Blockbuster.
Just like you could rent consoles.
Yeah, you could go down to Blockbuster Video, which we had one down here, and you'd rent the VCR, then you'd rent a couple movies. It wasn't crazy time like it became later. We'd rent like 5 or 6 movies. You'd get like a couple movies. You'd rent those. You'd bring the VCR home, hook it all up, and then you have it usually for parties. Mom would rent one for birthday parties. But I distinctly remember a birthday party where we watched Blue Thunder. I remember. I was like, oh man, this is awesome. Because all my buddies were over there. I looked up because I wasn't sure. I was like, wonder what the first VCR game was. Now I can't confirm that this was the first VCR game, but I went over to Board Game Geeks, who have a comprehensive list of...
They're pretty much in the know.
...of VCR board games. And the first one that they have listed was a game called Video Trivialities from 1984, which would have put the first VCR game somewhere in the ballpark of about 6 7 years in from the release of the VCR in the States, and probably right in the wheelhouse of when a lot of people ended up getting VCRs.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many games were released from VCR games. I was also surprised that the last VCR game they've got listed on here is from all the way into 1997. If you can believe that. It's the X-Files trivia game from 1997. Now, a lot of these games were licensed, Brent.
Yes.
And it's amazing how many of the games were based on stuff. I'm just going to run down a few of these because I think they're kind of funny. Of course, you've got stuff like Star Wars, Star Trek. Famous board games were a very popular choice. Stuff like Trivial Pursuit or Cluedo. Those often got released. But your big titles were licensed. You've got stuff like Wayne's World. One of my personal favorites, America's Funniest Home Video, because, hey, you can just put the tape in there and not even play the game on that one. You've got stuff like California Games, the VCR game. Yes, that's real. They just took the video game and made it a VCR game somehow. So that's one. Yeah, I know. Often games would be popular that were based on sports. There's basketball, baseball, football, wrestling. So you've got lots of that stuff in here. And golf, hockey. I shouldn't forget those. The Olympics are in there. So if you're into sports, you can watch that. I always wondered how that would play. I don't recall playing a lot of sports games on here. You also had a couple wrestling releases. One was All-Star Wrestling Power Slam, which actually I used to own. That was based on the AWA. There's also the WWF Wrestlemania game, which me and Boat played a couple weeks ago. And then you had some that were like the Three Stooges, the Honeymooners. These were based on licenses that were long since passed, but they were they pulled them back out of storage to give those a shot.
Well, for games like that,
yeah,
you've already got the footage. So the most expensive part of a VCR game's already done. You just chop it up, edit it, and you're good to go.
That's exactly.
And most of these things that you're naming are trivia games.
Right. And then there's one
which
here
makes it even easier.
There's one here I'd like to play. In fact, there's a little bit of footage played right now. There was a comedian in the 70s and 80s who was famous for doing impressions. His name was Rich Little. He's got a game in here called Rich Little's VCR Charades. That would be kind of cool. That's one of the earlier ones, too. Do you remember Rich Little, perchance? I don't think you do you? Deadgummit. He was a big deal. He had a big Howard Cosell impersonation. You probably don't know who that is either.
I do know who he is,
Well,
yes.
You got that going for you. So you've never played any of these. I've played a couple. In fact, I owned a couple, but I looked all week trying to find these stupid games. I owned Doorway to Horror. I owned All-Star Power Slam Wrestling was one that I owned. And I also owned one of the sports ones, which was I don't remember which one, but it was one of the football ones back in the day. These were not super popular amongst our crowd, but they did have their followers, the Brent.
They weren't super popular anywhere.
They did pretty well.
I mean, sales-wise.
Well, that's not what I read. I heard some of them did pretty well.
Well, it depends. What do you call pretty well?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't know what the I guess if they had a sequel, we're going to say they did okay. And
yeah.
So there were some. Trivial Pursuit, for example, had sequels. There were some that had sequels and series. So, but I think it's neat. They also had some real strange ones here. Like we're looking at one route, but there's one about fishing called Hooked on Bass. There's one on about shooting birds called Gone Birding. That's another one. So there was some bizarre stuff in here. There's a dog fight game. There's a lot of murder mystery games, which would be kind of fun.
Sure.
There's even one about horse racing, which I could see where that would be kind of fun. But
yeah, because those are easy. You just everyone gambles on what horse is going to win. Then you hit play, and then that's it. You're done.
Now, the name of this category was VCR games that aren't Action Max. Now, I'm going to, of course, I don't agree with you. I don't think Action Max is a VCR game per se, because it's not like the others, or your Captain Powers, where you have a gimmick that you shoot at the screen or whatever. But those, I guess you could sort of categorize as VCR games if you wanted to. But the Action Max also had a console that came along with it. If you're interested in the Action Max, that was one of my favorite episodes we ever did. If you go check out the Action Max, Britt hated it. That's another reason I liked it so much. It was a lot of fun. What are the problems with VCR games? Well, once you play through the tape, you're pretty much boned. You've seen everything.
It's tough. The replayability's tough.
Yeah, it's some of these things lend themselves to repeated views more than others. You know what I mean? But there's no way to change it. You can see the internet making VCRs a lot more fun, because you can film or even DVDs where you can add in 100 times more footage than you had.
Well, also with DVDs, you can go to different chapters. You could say, okay, if this is your second time playing, like skip to chapter 4 and then it's a whole different game.
Right.
It's a lot more replayable at that point.
Now, let's talk about how we came to play the game we chose this week. When this category got spun last week, I was very excited because I knew for sure that I had at least 2 VCR games standing by. One was called Doorways to Horror, and one was a wrestling title, and then I can't find them. Anyway, I looked all over my house. I don't think I threw them out because I remember holding one up to Boat one time and saying, we got to play this sometime, on camera. And it wasn't that long ago. So somewhere buried in my infinite stacks of crud are these games. But I got to give the Brent credit. He pulled our bacon out of the fire this week. Tell him what you did, the Brent.
We use a little program you can get off Steam or Good Old Games, a lot of places, called Tabletop Simulator. And what this is just a platform for people to make board games. And you have a lot of people who will copy in real life board games and let you play them digitally. The benefit of this, of course, is no cleanup. The downfall is you have to kind of learn the controls. But once you get over that, any game that comes up will be available to play. And the list of tabletop available games, either legitimate or fan created, is extensive. And I mean extensive.
Now, do you pay for the extra games or do you just pay for the software and that's it?
Both. You can get legitimate tabletop simulator versions of games if you want. They have a handful of fully licensed games, but mostly you are looking at fan created stuff, replications of games, and it is very dependent on the author on the quality. Some games are so advanced that the scripting is done for you. So, like, say, if a lot of stuff happens at the end of a turn, they'll just make an end of turn button. And when you get to that point, you hit the end of turn button and all of the bookkeeping or fiddly bits are automatically done for you. Tabletop Simulator is an incredibly diverse program. If you have any interest in board games, I highly recommend picking it up. Not sponsored, but holy cow, I use it almost every week.
It's almost on sale right now, too, if you're on Steam, if you're interested. Now,
yeah, $10.
Let me ask you,
$10 will get you in.
While we're talking about this, how do the various game, because I know we know some of these game manufacturers, they're in the real world. What are they? Are they keen on someone taking their junk and converting it to digital? I'm guessing they're not.
It's split because you have a lot of websites that do sort of the same thing, and for example, BoardGameArena.com has hundreds of licensed board games, all scripted out. You can play asynchronous or real time, and the manufacturers love it, give their blessings to it even, because they know that this is a way to get people to buy hard copies of the game. There, of course, are some manufacturers out there, producers, that don't like it, will request that the game gets taken down, and Steam just says, okay, you can't have that mod anymore, and then it's gone. Or, of course, you've always got your underground for this kind of stuff as well. So, when I knew this was going to be a rough week, so I started doing some research and found Nightmare, the game we're going to be playing today, is available through the Steam Workshop on Tabletop Simulator. And it is a very good version visually. And it even has, the video plays through a YouTube video. So it's ready to go. We were up and running in what, Aaron? 2 minutes?
Yeah. I was very impressed. And once you understand how to control the actual board, because you could spin the board around and zoom in and out and, manipulate the pieces. It was real simple.
And on more complicated games, you have to know you have to have more understanding of the program. But for something like Nightmare, it was quick and easy to get into because it's not a very complex game. But we'll get into that. But yeah, Tabletop Simulator, highly recommend it. It has multiple VCR games. This just happened to be the one we stuck with to do this week.
Now, I will say, we literally went to the 11th hour, didn't we, Brent, before we could get this thing in?
It was today when we finished this playing the game.
We played late into the night last night, but I will say, we absolutely spent a great deal of time with the game, and then it's one of the few times I've researched something before playing it, and so it actually added a different slant to it. So heck, Brent, enough talk. Let's just get into the darn thing. Like Brent said, we played a game. It's called Nightmare, man, and it was a game that was released in 1991. It was published by J.W. Spear and Sons. They did a lot of these VCR games. This one is a horror-based game that recommends 3 to 6 players and plays up to 60 minutes. And that's a fact because we went the whole 60. And it includes, of course, dice and cards. It's all dice and card based. I'm going to let Brent get into the particulars of it. Brent, did you look into? I actually finally found the background on this. Did you actually look into the background? You want to talk on that?
Absolutely. First, the name of the company that made this is A Couple of Cowboys.
Yeah.
This is an Australian-based creation, and it from, like you said, from 1991. This actually has a pretty interesting backstory of how this all happened. A couple of guys were filming for a program called Simon Townsend's Wonderful World. And that's where Philip Tanner and Brett Clements met. And, they had a good working relationship. So they kind of said, you know what? Let's do our own thing. And they came up with a program called Oz Quiz. And they started packaging this up. It was a game that came in a mini portable cooler, and it sold 300,000 units, which is huge in the board game world, especially back then.
Did you say that came in a cooler?
Yeah, came in a mini portable cooler.
Okay.
I don't know exactly. It's a quiz game, of course, but I don't know the particulars. So they went and they said, you know what? We think this could be a TV show. And they started pitching because they both had background in film and went and tried to sell this to producers and everything. And they were like, it's an awesome concept, but we're not going to run with it. And then after they got done with their pitch, got refused, one of the government broadcasters basically stole their idea and made the show. So they couldn't fight it. They didn't have enough money to fight it. So they said, okay, let's just go on to our next venture. And they came up with a show called Dare, based on Truth or Dare. They went, Parker's brother picked it up. They went and tried to get the TV rights for it. And again, the network was like, we're interested, but we don't think it's going to happen. And shortly after that, Double Dare, which I think you're familiar with, Aaron. I know I am as a kid. That's the networks picked up Double Dare shortly after.
So these guys are getting screwed twice.
They're getting screwed. Now, Dare and Double Dare probably different enough to be separate shows, but they were like, you know what? This is ridiculous. So we're going to just go and we're going to make our own horror film. And they both agreed. They said, you know what? We're going to do it because they've been doing TV shows. They've been doing commercials. They want to get into their own thing. So they decided that they're going to make a horror movie. And Philip said, let's do this horror movie. And then they got this idea. He's like, you know what? I have board game backgrounds. We both have movie backgrounds. Let's combine the two and we'll make a horror board game. And they developed it over 6 months. Brett ended up writing the script for it. They got, I'm going to butcher this name, Whitney Newsell as the main actor for this thing, who went along to have a tremendously diverse and long career, still works in the industry today, doing definitely mostly television series, but he's done a few other things as well. Very highly sought after and highly talented actor. And they get him, they film it, they film all his scenes, they work out the board game, they start playtesting within their own company, and playtesting is going well. So they say, you know what, we're going to do this. Put it all together, present it to the CEO, and bam, done. They said they loved it. Got it into production. Now, in 1991, in the Australian market, if you sold 5,000 units in your first year, you were considered a success. That was a successful market. They sold, just in the Christmas of 1991, 30,000 units just at Christmas, just in Australia. They went on from there. They said, we've got something. They started branching off into different markets, sold 70,000 throughout all of Australia, started bringing in actors from other countries because, this is an English language game. Started bringing in actors from other countries to play the main role, the main villain.
Ooh,
they
good
improved
idea.
them with all these other languages.
Yeah.
Aaron, how many copies across all of the Nightmare games, for which there were several, versus all the different languages, do you think they sold?
Well, I think there were I know there were at least 3 of these games. There may have been 4.
There were, yeah, and plus you have to remember they had all of the different language variants as well.
I don't know, 450,000.
4 million.
Wow.
4 million.
I was way off. Holy smokes.
The concept was so successful, especially in the beginning. They were going to spin this off into movies and television shows.
Yeah.
Now, sales, of course, slowed, mainly because the concept of VCR games started to slow as well. This is by far, from anything I found, to be the most successful VCR game. They really hit it on the head when they produced this. Now, okay, so we got all that out of the way. So what is the game? The game is a board game that the board game aspect of it is dull and boring. You basically put your pieces on the board and you go in a clockwise motion trying to collect keys. And the keys will unlock the middle, which will allow you to win the game. It's all based off of dice roll. When you land on certain squares, you'll draw a card and either do what the card says, or if it's based on time, you have to wait until that time of the VCR tape comes up. The way the VCR tape works in this is it continuously runs. You hit start when you begin play, and it runs in the background continuously. Most of the time, it just has a picture of a clock on it.
I'd never heard of that concept in a VCR game, by the way. Where
they
never
think it's
work
pretty
like
unique.
that. Yeah,
it's pretty unique. And every once in a while, a figure will come on the screen who's called the gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper will insult you and he'll berate you, and he is the driving force of the game. He'll tell you to do things. He'll banish some players to the black hole, which means they're out of the game for a certain amount of time. And it's all, the game is him. In reality, the game is him being able to do what he says. You talk back to the screen. Anytime he comes on the screen, you're supposed to stop play and acknowledge, say, yes, my gatekeeper, or no, my gatekeeper, or answer, out loud to the room. Because this is supposed to be played with 3 to 6 people around a table watching this VCR tape. And during play, he goes through many different emotions. He gets happy, he gets mad, he gets sad, he gets childlike, he gets evil. And it's all the play on his emotions and the background music and the build up that makes the game special. If the game was just the board game and you move around, nothing. There's absolutely nothing there. The game is so basic that it's it's dull. Even for 91, when a lot of the more complex aspects of board gaming weren't realized. But the Gatekeeper does such an incredible job keeping the energy up. Keep the acting in it is off the charts good.
Yeah.
Did I enjoy my time with Nightmare? I'm ashamed to say I did. I'm a board gamer who plays all these incredibly complex board games. I literally play a new board game every week. Euro-style board games, stuff that is complicated math problems or puzzles that are, based on building infrastructure or chains of events, combos of events. And this is Candyland level board gaming. And I am somewhat ashamed to say, playing this with Aaron last night, even though we didn't have the recommended 3 players, even though we did mess up some aspects of the game. Aaron, did you know on the back of the keys, each key has a special power, and one of the special powers is to not have to go to the black hole.
No, I didn't know that.
We screwed that up a little bit. But having the Gatekeeper come on the screen, yell, insult one of us, we really got into it. And that's another thing. If you don't have a group that you're playing with that plays with the gimmick, it's going to be a crap time. But if you have people that are willing to go along with the gimmick, say yes, my Gatekeeper, really get into the atmosphere, which is the actor does such a good job presenting. You can enjoy this game once, because once you play through it and you know the events, even though I couldn't tell you what event happens at what time, we've now seen all the events, and it's going to lose its appeal. So while I super enjoyed this game, and I know people who own this game, going back and playing a second time is not going to have near the impact that doing it for that first time, Aaron. What did you think about it?
Well, listen, I've played a lot of these VCR games, not this one. I've never played one, like I mentioned, where you just hit the tape, hit play, and go. And I'll talk, me and Boat just played with these recently. I'll talk about that here in a little bit to show you the difference. But it is nice to just hit the tape. They do a great job. It's funny, when I was downloading footage for this game, and it was just this guy's face and a clock, I was like, this is going to suck. But the guy is the game. I mean, he is, and he's top shelf. He's a top shelf actor. And he really is, he comes across great in the game. And as the game goes on, he becomes more and more unhinged. The music ramps up. It gets, at the end of the game, it was so loud we could hardly hear each other talk.
Yeah.
And it was just craziness is going on. And so that guy, that aspect of it's great. Like, that guy is great. He's great. Yeah. I can't put him over enough as an actor, quality actor. And who'd have thunk
he wasn't working with the best material.
Oh, I thought the material ended up being pretty good.
It was okay.
I'm sure he took it and then made it his own. The game, one of the elements of the game that I didn't like was there's so many draw piles. There's 3 draw piles in this game, plus and one of the draw piles does nothing but let you do events at certain times on the screen. And I guess we were drowning in cards. There were so many cards, too many cards that you pick up through the game. And that was a turnoff. Also, the game does kind of get you to rush through. And sometimes this guy will pop on the game screen while you're in the middle of a turn or something, and there's no waiting around for you to finish what you were doing, because this guy's screaming at you and bad-mouthing you. His material, I thought his material was really good. He makes you feel like garbage. Sometimes he's nice, but often he's just a complete scumbag. He treats you like crap the whole game. He insults you. He insults all the players. He'll just pop up and just, for no good reason, stick you in the hole. You've got a real odd relationship with this guy, but he makes it a lot of fun. The element of collecting the keys. This game, we played a 60-minute game last night. Now, I won the game in about 50 7 minutes. But it was we went watched the last 3 minutes. But I mean, it was right down to the wire, and it a lot of the. This isn't a game for your European board game set, who believe that the only way to win these games is through your own wits and your and number counting and math. That's all out the window here. I don't think there's any strategy to it. But it would be fun on like a night with your buddies. I could see getting 6 people together around the table and playing this and having a good time. We should mention this because Pixels brought it up. In some parts of the world, this game is known as AtmosFEAR, and also AtmosFEAR is on all the cards and stuff as well. And I believe there was a other shows, like I'm 100% sure that in the UK there's a show called Nightmare, and I'm sure that's why they had to do that. And there's some other places too. In case you were wondering about that.
There were legal reasons they couldn't use Nightmare throughout the world because properties already existed. Yes,
I will say though, I liked. One of the problems with the VCR games is that you're perpetually rewinding and stop or playing and stopping, and so you're part of the game time is wound up. If you ever used a VCR, they don't just fire right up. Not old ones anyway. You have to sit there, and they got like they crank up, and then you have to stop, and they're making all this noise. It is neat and to just hit play, and it adds the elements. The timer, the ability to know that you're going to be playing the tape the whole time, it lets them ramp up a lot of the tension. Yes. This was definitely one of the more tense games I've played. I could absolutely sit around and play this with the boy. He would love this one time. And this guy would probably scare him, because he's such a jerk. But for kids, playing something with
Aaron,
your
kids, your son's not that big of a jerk, man.
No,
calm down.
Take off. I'll talk about this guy. But I think that with your kids, this could be a lot of fun. And I will say, the fact that this is available to play on Board Game Geek, and by the way,
on Tabletop Simulator.
They've also got all the other versions of this too. Yeah. So you could actually sit down and play 4 or 5 versions of this, and have a good time with it. You didn't get into the backstory on this thing, but I'm going to get into it a little bit because I think it's sort of interesting because I didn't even know it. So the game takes place in an area called the Other Side, and there are 6 harbingers. That's the players. Each one has the authority over a province. Okay, we didn't know any of this. To play the game, you pick one of the harbingers. There's Gavaden the werewolf, Helen the poltergeist, Khufu the mummy, Baron Samadi the zombie, and the Chantrain the witch, and Elizabeth Bathory the vampire. Yeah. Their names and stuff do get mentioned on the board, but the guy never ever talks about any of the backstory, which I kind of wish he had. I mean, I think it would have been a lot more fun if this had like a little intro video that sort of showed what was going on. And I wonder if they added that stuff after they shot the video, Brent.
To be fair, all of them except for Helen the poltergeist are based off of historic characters or real life characters. So they all have real world background.
I just wonder why they didn't implement that into the video. Because we didn't know. Oh, come on.
I'm telling you, that was probably part of it.
You could put 5 minutes of an intro on there, because we didn't know any of this stuff that was going on here. Where they're trying to go around the board to win, so you could gain power or whatever. None of that stuff's mentioned. That would have been a lot, because that's sort of a missed opportunity. Well,
and the cards reflect the characters by name, and if you don't know who's who, it does become a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
agree.
I think it would have been a lot more fun if they would have worked that stuff into the game more. And the funny thing is, in the subsequent games, Nightmare 2 and 3, the different other characters actually are the ones that end up hosting the shows.
Yes.
So do you want to get into that a little bit?
No, not really. Because for this game, that's not so important. And they only made 3 games. The next game, the Baron, the zombie, is the host. And I believe they did one with Helen. And then I think all the other ones got canceled.
Well, here they are. Nightmare 2 is hosted by Baron Samadi, and it came out in 92. Nightmare 3 is hosted by and the Chantrain. That's the witch.
The witch.
That's in 93. And Nightmare 4 It's hosted by Elizabeth Bathory. You remember her? She's the one that used to bathe in the blood to keep her young. That one was released in 94. And the next one was supposed to have Khufu, but in 95, but they stopped. They didn't ever quite finish that one.
Correct.
So there you go.
Now, Aaron, I have something for you to consider.
All right.
This game came out 30 years ago.
Oh, geez. I consider that painful.
What is the popular thing to do with games or events or shows or movies when they reach certain milestones of their existence?
Maybe like an anniversary collection or something.
Kickstarter anniversary collection.
No kidding.
It just finished up December 13th. How much in American dollars do you think they raised?
Now, wait a minute. So you're telling me that we randomly picked this. Then we randomly picked this game, and it just had a Kickstarter Revival end?
Yes.
Well, can you tell me what they were asking for, and I'll take a guess?
No, just how much did they raise?
They probably raised, I don't know, this game's pretty popular. Let's say they raised, I don't know, $100,000.
They raised $355,000 US.
Yeah.
Which succeeded not only in their Kickstarter campaign, but all of their backer goals. They are re-releasing this game. It is not going to be a VCR game anymore, of course. That would have been detrimental to the whole concept. But they are re-releasing the board, cards. They're going to have special pieces. The video is going to be downloadable or watchable, streamable online. They actually brought the guy back, not to refilm. It's not a new film. They're just retouching the old footage. But they brought the old guy, the main actor, back to do a little side shoot.
Yeah.
And successful Kickstarter campaign finished up less than 2 weeks ago. What do you think about that, Aaron?
That is, I'm telling you, it's serendipity. It's unbelievable. Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. I have to say, I found out that this game's popular, and I'm not sure I've ever heard of it until this week. To be honest, I know it's one of the most popular games for the VCRs, but I mean, maybe I'd moved on in 91. I was already out of high school and out working, so I guess that ship had sailed. That's crazy, though, to think about. Good. I'm glad to see. Listen, you should be rewarded for doing well, and they did. And this was a good one, I have to say. I give this one a thumbs up to try. And I like I said, you only have to go through it once, but I would get as many people as you could. That'd probably make it a lot more fun.
Yes. Yeah, and if you are interested, you can actually still go to the Kickstarter campaign and order as a late backer. They haven't gotten to the point where they've cut that off yet.
Are they going to actually release a box and stuff for it?
Yes. Yep. The whole box, the whole board, new cards, new pieces, new everything, except you won't get the tape. You'll have to stream that online. But if you do a search for AtmosFEAR on Kickstarter, you can, if this is something that interests you, you can actually go and pick it up. They're actually selling both AtmosFEAR and Nightmare, depending on, what you grew up with as a kid, or you can buy both if you're insane. So yeah, check it out. The Kickstarter is pretty interesting. It's kind of fun that they keep the demeanor of the gatekeeper throughout the Kickstarter updates. So that's kind of fun to read. He calls the backers maggots, and
I've got to go see that.
He breaks. Oh, it's all text.
Oh, bummer.
But he breaks down when they reach their goal, and in the video at one point he breaks down. He talks about how he's not always mean, and he wants to do something kind. He kind of does that in the Kickstarter comments. So yeah, I thought it was pretty incredible that we just happenstance the 30th anniversary, and I wanted to be sure to get that in there.
That is crazy. Before we get out of VCR games entirely, I'm not going to do a full bit on this, but I couldn't resist the BRENT. Just about a month and a half ago, me and the Boat brought this out I bought this for him as a gift, and he brought this out on a whim, and me and him ran through it. You didn't get to play it, so I'm just going to touch on it briefly. But me and Boat took a look at Wrestlemania, the VCR game.
Can't show footage.
Yeah, I can because it's from the video that I edited, and so me and the boat took a look at this game. And let me tell you something. This is the most heavily edited video I've ever done. Trying to get this thing going, and we did it. We pulled it off on YouTube. No easy task, but the VCR Wrestlemania game. Again, this was more of a traditional VCR game that I was used to, where you go around a board with your wrestlers trying to win the match, and as you do it, you occasionally will come onto an area where you will hit play on the tape, and then it will show a bit of footage, and then once you watch the footage, it will tell you how many points were given up or whatnot, and it's a lot more traditional wise what I'm used to. I will say, if you're a wrestling fan, playing a game like this is sort of fun. You can see some of this old footage. And if you're a board game fan, it's definitely more. There's more to it. A lot more to it.
There is, but it's still
It's
garbage.
a better board game than Nightmare was. But it has really complex rules. And it's almost hard to follow rules. But there are a couple of elements of the game that I think are great. And one of them is when you start the game, you both have to reach into the promo deck and get you a kind of wrestling style promo, which I thought was pretty funny. But aside from that, it can get to you playing this game because it just seems like back and forth random action. I think me and Boat did best 2 out of 3. I won that one too. I'm sort of like the VCR king.
Well done.
And yeah, thank you. If you are interested in checking this VCR game out, we filmed an entire game. You're seeing footage of it right now if you're watching at home. You can see there's a lot of riveting footage here on the right of a blank screen. That's because the VCR part, once you're not playing it, it just goes to turn the VCR off and it's just a blank screen till the game part starts. But it was pretty fun. I had a good time cutting promos with the Boat on this. And Boat, as usual, whenever something like this comes up, he's triple excited for whatever reason. I've never understood. But we did have a good time having fun with that one. Now, something else that provides me infinite pleasure, Brent, and is always a good time. You know what it is. Let's spin this sucker. It's time for the wheel. Here we go.
Oh, all right. Let's do some wheel action.
I'm going to tell you right now, we've added a couple pieces this week. The new Retro Rewind piece this week is the Sega Dreamcast. I'm bringing it back with the Dreamcast.
Yes.
And then our new piece this week, this comes to us courtesy of Chris Bolds. And the pie piece is sequel games that aren't like the original. Games that aren't like the original. There's a lot of stuff on here, the Brent. It should be fun to pick something out here. Are you ready to go?
I am. Let's spin something good.
Here we go.
Preferably burger-based games. That's what I'm rooting for.
And holy smokes, are you kidding me? The winner, Brent, is the Dreamcast.
Interesting.
Got it in one, the Dreamcast. Now, do you want to set up any insider rules to the Dreamcast this week?
Absolutely not. Dreamcast, the whole library is open.
We haven't, I don't know if we've done more than one. Have we only done one ever Dreamcast
just
thing? One. Yeah. I don't remember what I played. Do you remember?
I don't either right off the top of my head.
It was a long time ago. I'm going to look real quick just because I'm interested. The Dreamcast, of course, I've got 4 of these things, Brent, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Actually, we did, the last one we've actually done 2 of these.
I think I did Seaman, didn't I?
We did Typing of the Dead and Rush 2049.
Oh, okay.
That was the one we did before. So anything aside from those 2 is Inbounds. The Brent should be a lot of fun. I will say I do love San Francisco Rush 2049, so I'm not surprised that I picked that one. But I'm going to pick something that I don't even know about. I don't even know. I'm going to go way out in left field. So it should be a lot of fun. Brent, any housekeeping we need to take care of here before we move along?
Absolutely. Last week, we took a look at Sinclair QL games. And at that time, we had bought a compilation of games.
Oh,
and I made the comment that I didn't think that the developers were getting any kickback from this, or I suspected they weren't. We had the producer of those compilations come into our chat channel, was very respectful, and said, nope, The ones that we can track down, be it the developer or the producer, of course, whoever holds the rights, they do a kickback to for whenever they make sales royalties. So thumbs up for that. I'm sure it's, pennies, but it's the fact that they make the effort to do what's right, to support those guys, makes spending that money for those compilations even better to me.
That QL episode was well received. It was one of our bigger shows, which is funny because we drugged that one out kicking and screaming. I also got a lot of comments on the way we pronounce Cuthbert. In fact, I'm looking at Hazy 33 right here. No, he says the way it should be pronounced is Cuthbert. Cuss, C-U-S-S, Cuthbert. He said every time we said, we had a lot of people that say this, that anytime we said Cuthbert, they would groan and shake their hand at the screen. Look at these dummies. All I can tell you is in the States here, in the good old US of A, where we're as smart as we are handsome, that sucker is C-U-T-H in the U.S. That's Cuth. There's no way you could get cuss out of that. And so we apologize. It's funny because I've been calling him Cuthbert my whole life. Because I've played Cuthbert Goes Walkabout, or Cussbert, if you will.
From now on, I'm just calling him Seabert.
Yeah. So there you go. But yeah, we do apologize for anyone that didn't like the way we pronounce Cuthbert.
I'm not apologizing for that.
You are an unapologetic bum. But yeah, thanks everybody for watching that Sinclair QL. That was a good episode for us. And maybe one of these days, Brent. Listen, we've got this package. We'll come back and do another QL, and we should absolutely come back and do another VCR games because that was once we actually found one, that was a lot of fun. So I'm just going to start looking for VCR games, and then maybe it'll come up on the Retro Rewind somewhere down the line. Should be pretty fun. I want to quickly and briefly mention that the promotion with Retro Rewind for the Christmas gift cards has ended. Frank did a very good job. They donated quite a bit of money up there to the bread.
$700 dues to the local food bank.
We did not take the prize, the Brent. We were the underdog, and I will say it wasn't for the lack of shilling and underhanded tactics by you. At every step of the way, filling in for any show, you can be sure Brent was going to shill. But Frank was very kind and did give everyone a $25 gift card to give away, which we'll probably give that away on our upcoming 200th
episode.
You want to briefly, before we go, mention about what's going on with the 200?
Nope.
Okay, still tight-lipped. Don't think that's because he's being coy. He doesn't know is the correct answer. Look at him. He don't know what's going on. So, please join us next week as we once again delve into Sega's last console, but the Sega Dreamcast. Should be a lot of fun. Thanks a lot, everybody. For God's sakes, before the week's over, pull out those dusty old VCRs, grab your copy of Nightmare, and get to playing, you slimy maggots. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed the show. Special thank you to Duncan Styles for our vector-style graphics and BartBit for our amazing music. Would you like to help keep ARG spinning? You can do so at patreon.com/ARG Presents. Just like these fine folks. Rollo, Olaf Hope, Terry Howard, Gary Heather, John Schaller, The Slow Norris, Frodo and L, Chris Folds, Mitsuyama, Jason Warnes, Rob Black O'Hara, Andy Craig, Andy Jones, Kevin Bean, Pachaco 6502, Anthony Jarvis, Steve Rasmussen, Bernhard Lucas, Dave Velociraptor, Graham W. Vetke, Raushi, Mr. B, David Terrence, Super Tech Boy, Oram, Sundown, Texas Foosballer, Air Shack, Retroalgy, John Dykeman, Jerry Dennington, Z9K9, and Mario Ramey. They all have access to our Discord channel and their names put and called out in the credits. Why don't you? If you have an idea for a wheel piece, you can email us at argpresents@mail.com. Be sure to visit our sponsor, RetroRewind.ca, and use promo code ARG10 to get 10% off your order. We film live every Sunday 10 a.m. EDT. Hope to see you there.